Because we're not recording right now.
How about now?
Yeah, we're recording now.
Okay, I might have to go over it again because, okay, we're recording now. So I'm going to try to do it again. We're talking about Helmut Reiser, and I said that Helmut Reiser wrote a book. It's been translated into English. It's a real thin book with a very dense with important material. And it's got some great photographs. A couple of the photographs show these guys' dogs, like Reiser and his sport training partners, show their dogs biting the crap out of people. And the point was that Reiser at that time was mistaken as one of the people from the newly developed prey training tradition. And what prey training was, and still is the idea that you're going to allow the dog's primary psychological involvement during work on a man to be with the equipment. His primary relationship is with the equipment, not with the man. And for technical reasons, that winds up stimulating prey behavior, and you basically have a prey dog. And so the fear at that time in the SV of Germany was that when prey training was very controversial, the fear at the time was that the prey trained dogs would start winning trophies. They'd be the only dogs anybody bred their bitches to. And after a few years, the German Shepherd dogs would go down the tubes and they wouldn't have serious dogs anymore. So Reiser, who, as I said, was an enfant terrible and liked to mess with people, who brought his dog Drexler to the podium to accept his first prize in the Leistungsbundesliga-Prüfung in a muzzle. That's a statement. Like in the German Shepherd world, a judge can't touch my dog because it's not safe. That's a big statement. It caused a huge controversy. So the last thing Reiser wanted to be thought of was as a prey trainer, even though he made very extensive use of prey to build what he wanted in the dog. And so one of the ways that they made the point in the book was by taking photographs of their sport dogs, Reiser and his training partners, biting the crap out of people. So there are two photographs, one of a dog latched onto the back of a guy's leg in leather bite pants, because this is, 80s Schutzhund. There were no bite suits. Hidden sleeves were kind of rare and a sort of a kind of a fringe thing to do. People just taught the dogs to bite here, and that was all. And so they had no equipment. They just wore the leather bite pants that we always used to use when training dogs. And they're called bite pants just because they stop the teeth, but they don't stop anything else. It hurts like hell. And so there's this guy getting the back of his leg, just full mouth, crushing bite on the back of his leg in leather pants. Then there's another guy getting bitten on the chest in the leather pants. And the way they decided who was going to do that work is that Reiser and his training partner, Gunther Wasshausen, I think it was Gunther Wasshausen, like flipped a coin and said, "It's you, dude. You're taking the bites." And so that was the thing that was an interesting thing about Reiser. He was mistaken as a prey guy, a guy who liked dogs that played their way through work instead of were deadly serious. These guys, this is before the positive reinforcement revolution. This is before a lot of the stuff that we know now. These guys trained with pressure. They made use of stress. They exploited stress. They were very, very hard on their dogs. So it's a way that almost nobody trains dogs anymore. But the influence of the theoretical model is very, very strong. Okay, Chris, what do you want me to do? Keep going on the next guy?
Yeah, keep going on the next guy. As long as I keep connection, and then we'll stand here for a little bit. Then we'll see like what we're recording. We'll edit the stuff later. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So the next guy who actually was a mentor, and the way he wound up being a mentor is I got hired to write his videos, to write the scripts for his videos. I've written the script. I wrote the script for Dildai's videos, Balabanov's videos. It's just because some dog trainers out there with tremendous talent and kind of depth of feeling and thinking just don't have writing skills and systematizing skills. So they need somebody like me to understand their method and then go in and work out their didactics, how they get the ideas across, how they get the methods across. So I got hired to do the videos for Dildai. First time I'd ever met him. And he actually wound up, like, almost nobody knows his name these days, I don't think. But this was in the very infancy of positive reinforcement training and work dogs. People in AKC obedience, and this is before agility, all that stuff. People in AKC obedience, there were some of those who trained with positive reinforcement, operant conditioning, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that was almost unknown in working dogs, almost unknown. And so Dildai was one of the first proponents who had great success. Like a couple of his students won the WUSV championships and all kinds of stuff like that. And the thing about Dildai was that he had 2 or 3 completely original ideas. I mean, mind-blowing ideas. And if you're trying to make a contribution to a field, and when your ass is dead, you want your influence to remain, what you want to do is come up with original ideas. And to have 2 or 3 of them all at once is really rare. And Dildai had 2 or 3 really original and important ideas. Damn, my phone's ringing. Wait, we still there, Chris?
Oh, we're still here.
Okay, good. So Dildai had 2 or 3 completely original ideas. One of them was the primacy of positive reinforcement, that what we should do is we should train the dog in a low stress state with moderate motivation using food. The next one was a really, really powerful insight. Gottfried's system was completely integrated around the idea of reducing conflict in the dog. And that conflict came in 2 flavors. One flavor was conflict between handler and dog, right? And another aspect of conflict was conflict in the dog's mind, we'll call it, between opposing impulses. So a dog who's really afraid, and he's so afraid he might bite you, and he moves at you and moves away and moves at you, that's a dog showing conflict between his fear and his desire to bite to make the situation resolve itself, right? And so a lot of what Dildai did was directed towards reducing conflict and all this other kind of stuff. And it was really powerful and super original. So for instance, Dildai would give a dog a bite in the blind after barking, and now the guy taught really boring seminars, right? This shit was not entertaining and it moved really, really slow. So he's this kind of big, kind of ape-like, strongly built guy, and kind of slow in his movements, right? Like an old tired farmer. And he spoke slowly. Everything with Gottfried happened slowly. So Dildai give a dog a bite, a young dog who hasn't done the work before, give the dog a bite, have the handler withdraw and stand with the dog, holding the sleeve, and then Dildai would light a pipe, smoke on it for a few minutes. And after a while, the dog would get bored or whatever and drop the sleeve. And the instant he dropped the sleeve, the work would start again. And Dildai would wait as long as he needed to. So it was a way of producing the transition to a next exercise without conflict, because conflict changes the dog's mood. Sometimes if you induce conflict, it makes the dog more powerful in a stressy kind of way, and sometimes it makes the dog weaker. Well, Dildai drove at the idea of making the dog as strong as possible by putting him in a no conflict state, right? And I'd never seen anybody do anything like this. And it was really powerful and really original. And not many people are, kind of brave enough to do stuff like that. And Dildai was. So he had a big influence on me. And I hope a lot of other people who are working in a low conflict kind of orientation, I hope they were influenced by Gottfried too, because his influence is important. There's a set of videos about Gottfried Dildai distributed by Canine Training Systems. They're probably all online now, but you can go to Canine Training Systems to look up Gottfried Dildai stuff. And I wrote the scripts, and the scripts are really elaborate, almost like short books. And so they really get a lot of information across with some good video and stuff like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of his stuff, but I've definitely been on Canine Training Systems before.
He's really old-fashioned now. So we're talking, I think I did the videos in the early 90s, and things have moved at such a pace in the last 20 or 30 years that the 90s is ancient history now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, next person to talk about is Ivan Balabanov. I call him Ivan because I think that's not Ivan, because I think that's the way the name is pronounced. And I make a guess at Balabanov. Most people call him Balabanov. I don't know which one is correct. So Balabanov, I think he's originally a Romanian who moved to Western Europe, actually worked in Belgian ring clubs, as a sport guy, as a hobbyist, and then made the jump to America, where he, like Reiser, has helped to change everything. Now, I call him a mad genius, right? Because the guy is a genius, but he's kind of difficult to learn from because his thoughts are really elliptical, and his teaching method is kind of elliptical, and he's not real concerned about making you happy with him in his seminar, right? He presents the information and you get it or you don't get it. It's as simple as that. So he's not an entertainer, right? And he's this big, tall guy, like thinner than me. He's got this funny, reedy little voice and still a strong accent. And he says the most penetrating things about dogs. And so this is one of the guys who worked for the first time in working dogs in the behavior marking tradition or orientation. What I mean by that, everybody should know, is a system of communication between the handler and the dog where the handler can mark a behavior as to be followed by something else. Mark a behavior to be followed by reward, or mark a behavior to be followed by punishment, and identify for the dog the causal link between its behavior and what happens to it next. And in the DoD context, we're talking about the use of the word yes, use of the word no, use of the word good, all that kind of stuff. Though good is not praising the dog, it's an item of information is what it is. It's a unit of information. Balabanov was one of the first guys to work out an entire system, and certainly the most prominent person working in America, to work out an entire system using behavior marking, relying to a great extent on positive reinforcement and stuff like that. Now, and one of the really, really penetrating things he said to me that has influenced me ever since is I was interviewing him to write his scripts, right? And I asked him at one point, we were talking about some exercise, and Ivan said, if the dog doesn't do it, you say no, then you correct, and then you go on. But the thing is, it was like forced retrieval or something. You're like really close to the dog. So in principle, you don't need a marker for the adverse event that happens, for the aversive events. If you're punishing with a choke chain or a pinch collar or something like that, you can do it right on top of the behavior, so it's paired in time with the behavior. So in a way, saying no isn't necessary. And so playing devil's advocate, I said, Ivan, why do you bother to say no? Why don't you just correct the dog? And he acted like that nobody had asked him that question before. And he thought kind of deeply for a minute. And then he said, I don't ever want anything to happen to the dog that is not signaled to him beforehand. Nothing important should ever happen to the dog as a surprise to him. It always should be signaled. And where he went from that, and I could detect this from his training, is he would have dogs that if he said no, the correction that followed the no, if he used a correction, was just a little chink on the pinch collar, just a little chink. And the dog would act like, oh man, I'm a bad dog. That was awful. That sucked. I never want that to happen again. This same dog, in a context of bite work or stimulated obedience or whatever, you could hammer on the dog, absolutely hammer on the dog. And because you hadn't, and all it would do is give him spirit, right? And because you hadn't preceded it and predicted it with no, the dog interpreted it differently. It's not painful, it's not bad, it's stimulating, right? So sure. That was, among many other important ideas, that was really influential to me. And I still try to work in that tradition. Like, I only surprise the dog when that's really what I deliberately mean to do. That's the point of the whole thing. The rest of the time, I'm always making sure that the dog knows what's going to happen later. He knows when he's going to get the ball. He knows when he's going to be punished. He knows when he's going to get food. He knows when he's going to get a pat on the head, right? Everything is known to him on the basis of the system of signals between handler and trainer.
So you, real quick though,
go ahead.
Ivan was the first person you ever saw use verbal cues prior to any physical things going on. Essentially the beginning of marker training and its practical application.
I wouldn't necessarily credit him with it, I think other people out there were doing it. I think Michael Ellis, who trained with Yvonne back in the beginning, was doing it. So I wouldn't necessarily say he invented this stuff, but what I would say is he was a very, very early adopter. He was super creative and came up with theory and method that worked around this method. And he had great influence because he did very well in international competition. So people lined up to go to his seminars, to watch the videos we did, the whole deal. So I'm not saying he was the first, he was the best. I'm saying he wound up being the most important because you guys can still go online, go to Canine Training Systems again, and see the Ivan Balabanov videos. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, those were some of the first ones I watched.
Yep. It's kind of funny. During the Dildai videos, I needed bad examples, right? Like I needed examples of dogs biting with partial mouths, dogs looking all stressy, all that kind of stuff. And I had this big library of video that we had developed during making my videos and some other people's videos. And so anytime I needed a video of a dog doing not what we want in the Dildai video, I would drop in some of this video that often featured me as a dog trainer, right? As the agitator. And what people came to me later and said, "Oh, Stuart, you got to know, those Dildai videos are interesting. They're really good, but man, he's trashing you. You're on there, and he's saying what you're doing is wrong, and your dogs look like shit." And I didn't know what to say. I didn't understand the distinction between creating a teaching instrument and kind of advertising and representing a method, right? They didn't realize I'd written the videos. You thought anyway. That's kind of my deal. The work of a script writer is not not greatly appreciated.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So the next guy that I would mention as a strong and important influence is Michael Ellis. And before I did this interview with you, I sat down to write some notes. And what I wrote about Michael was this: one of the best dog men in the costume, meaning the bite suit, at the end of a leash when training a dog, or in front of a class in the US and in the world. Michael is almost without peer. He is the most lucid, clearest, most creative speaker in dog training that I know of. And he's a brilliant analyst and a brilliant technician of training. And he has like a large body of videos out there that one can learn from. So Michael Ellis is the shit, right? Absolutely the shit. He's also a real cool guy, but the thing that really distinguishes him, in addition to his talent and his technical ability, is he's a super clear, incisive speaker. He doesn't use fancy words like I do normally. He communicates it a little more simply, and he just has a gift for making things clear. It's really great. It's really remarkable.
It's beautiful to watch.
Okay, so, and wonderful to watch. Nobody produces more impressive work from dogs than Michael does. Okay, next one is a guy named Dave Croyer. And Croyer, I know, has a reputation. He has a small kennel outside of Hutto, Texas. And I met up with him in a kind of an accidental way. But the deal with Croyer is still very active. He's still teaching. He's still competing on a regular basis in international trials and clocking up high scores. And this is what one needs to look at when you're looking for instructors and teachers. It's not the guy who won the championship last year that you need to learn from. It's the guy who got third last year and fifth the year before and eighth the year before and third the year before, with different dogs, coming all the time with different dogs and bringing them to very, very high levels of performance. Well, that's the kind of guy that Croyer is. He has taken a lot of dogs to high level international trials and shown impressive stuff. Not always the winner, but shown very impressive stuff. And he is one of the only work dog people right now that trains working dogs with a sort of a complete free shaping and successive approximation system. So he takes a young dog or a new dog into his training room, and he doesn't give commands. He doesn't tell the dog what to do. He lets the dog hang out until the dog begins to generate behavior And then Croyer starts telling the dog which behaviors will be reinforced and which ones won't. And on that basis, he teaches dogs all of the skills in Schutzhund sport, what's now called IGP sport, right? So a dog that will only have had positive reinforcement with food will do all the exercises in obedience, right? Now it has to be a slightly low distraction environment, stuff like that, but he'll teach a young dog to do all this stuff. And then later on, he begins to influence the dog's behavior with aversives. And he's a technician of absolute genius, right? And one of the interesting things I got from him is I was taught to train dogs through my relationship with the dogs, which basically involved kicking their ass, right? Like when I was a kid, I got taught how to kick a dog's ass. And that legacy is something that's been hard to escape from and hard to get out of. And so let me see, I forgot where I was talking about Croyer and
you're talking about kicking ass.
Yeah, kicking ass. Oh yeah, that was what
you were talking about. His reshaping, yeah.
So we used to train dogs through the relationship. You use the relationship of dominance over the dog and all that kind of stuff. That's how you train them, right? And Croyer and this new generation of work dog guys who work in a pretty strict, at least part of the time, in a pretty strict positive reinforcement setting. They don't work through the relationship. It's like a business relationship. I do this and you give me food reliably, right? And so the interesting thing about that is not only does it not rely on the relationship, but sometimes it doesn't affect the relationship, right? Like I used to get my relationship with the dog where I wanted it in the course of training the dog. Croyer trains the dog, and then, oh yeah, by the way, at some point he tells the dog, I'm master, right? At some point he does the relationship work so that the dog becomes reliable and will work in any context and stuff like that. And in my day, there was no distinction. Now there's a very clear distinction between some people, between teaching the dog the exercises and teaching him fluency, and gaining very strong influence with him so that he behaves according to command in any circumstance and consistently and all that kind of stuff. So as I said, Dave's still teaching. He's got stuff all over the internet. Really, really valuable guy to listen to. Also has a really elegant method for training detection in a food reinforcement framework that influenced the work of the breeding program quite a lot for teaching final response. And this system is kind of the new tradition of don't teach the dog to search first, teach the dog to respond first, then teach him he's going to have to search for the thing that he's going to respond to, right? So Croyer has a very, very interesting and well integrated system for doing this work.
Yeah, I put out quite a bit of information because his DVD series that he has regarding detection, there's not a lot of detection DVDs out there, especially like more recent ones or more recent modern methods. His is brilliant. I really love it.
Yeah. No, Croyer's the shit. Very, very important guy. And he's not winning all the world championships, but he competes again and again at a high level with dogs in ring sport and IGP and the whole deal. And he is a solid citizen. Okay, last guy I'd like to discuss who had a big influence on me and still available to influence you guys if you want to be influenced is a guy named Mike Suttle. Mike Suttle has a business he calls Logan House. I can't remember if it's in, I don't know, it's South Carolina or I don't know. Anyway, I can't remember where his place is, but he breeds dogs, and a lot of his living comes from breeding Malinois of KMPV background and selling them to police, selling them to special forces, all that kind of stuff. So Suttle is a very interesting guy, really penetrating thinker, very lucid, clear speaker. So like Ellis, he's very easy to learn from. He gives a great seminar, right? With many, many important points. And if there's stuff that you already know, he expresses it in a way that helps you make it more clear and put it in better relationship with all the stuff that you know, right? So, and then he'll come up with some totally new ideas too. So And he's also one of the pioneers in training really hard dogs with positive reinforcement methods, because Croyer likes top tier dogs. He likes special forces kinds of dogs and stuff like that are really powerful animals, not a joke. And Subtle was one of the first guys to approach those dogs in a positive reinforcement framework. He's also a superb technician of drive building and development in puppies. He does some of the best work I have ever seen, and he's also quite a reputable breeder. So I recommend you look up Subtle if you can as well. Go to his seminars. He does chicken clicking seminars where he shows up with a trailer full of chickens and starts showing you how to train, condition chickens to do stuff with a clicker, and then he shows you how to do it with little bitty puppies, and he does detection and the whole deal. He does very, very interesting work. So I recommend him strongly.
If you guys can't find any information on any of these people, I have a lot of their streams, DVDs, books, papers written by them, which I'll post those things later. But yeah, almost every single person on this list, except a couple of the very beginning ones that are, were alive before I was even born. But awesome. That's an extreme list of mentors right there, man.
Another guy I'd mention, just because I think he does remarkably good work, and he's a really solid citizen in a practical working dog realm, and also a friend of mine for like 40 years, is a guy named Kevin Sheldall. Kevin recently retired from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, but he has for many years handled a work dog on the street, run classes every year to train other completely raw green cops with completely raw green police dogs. And after a period of just a few weeks, you see dogs with a high level of technical ability. I don't know how he does it. It's absolutely amazing. And I have a story.
How do you spell his last name?
Sheldall, Sheldall. And
okay.
The only way to get exposure to him is to go to his classes. I think he also teaches the occasional seminar. I don't think he has videos. I don't think he has a book and that kind of stuff. But he's a real deal. He's a German Shepherd man. As long as I've known him, when all the other cops are going to Malinois, Kevin would import every few years from Europe for himself a first-class German Shepherd dog and then use that dog on the street. He also is quite capable of training an IGP dog to a V rating, and he's done it many, many times. So he's one of those complete trainers. He can do sport and work for points, and he also works dogs at night in rough situations and gets it done. And he's quite expert with electric collar. Now, he's a completely practical police dog trainer, right? Like, Kevin is not out to impress you. He's not out to show you how fancy what he does is. He's only out to get it done. And the degree to which he can get it done is astonishing to me. The guy's a really, really good instructor. And my best story about Kevin Sheldall, or one that was very kind of influential on me, was I taught a police dog seminar in New Mexico. And at the time, the thrust in police dogs, this is back when you took a dog to a building, you started to try to talk to somebody in the building, your dog went ape shit with barking, and then when you're ready, you open the door, you turn your dog loose, and he runs in the back of the building, right? And if you find somebody, then you're gonna have to go in after him and go figure out what he's got. In this era, people were realizing the error of their ways, right? They were realizing it's not safe to have your dog disappear in the back of a building you're searching. You need to have tactical control of your dog, use tactical skills and thinking and all that kind of stuff. And your dog is there to make you more safe instead of less safe, because there are very few things as unsafe as diving into a situation with unknown threats, and you're in a hurry and you feel a great sense of imperativeness because your dog is in the building someplace with something unknown and you got to get to him. That'll make you do a lot of really risky stuff. So there was a kind of a new awareness that a good police dog wasn't just an ass eater. A good police dog was trained at a high level, high technical level, and that the officer had excellent control of the dog. And so I was just I was just putting out this message, right? It wasn't my message; it was other people's message, but it grabbed me, and I got onto it, and I started to base my police dog seminars around it. And so I go to New Mexico to train this police dog seminar, and there's a bunch of cops I never met there, big old corn-fed kind of guys with their police dogs. None of them have shit to say, right? So you can ask for questions, no questions. These guys just look at you, right? I'm thinking to myself, oh God, I got another one of these seminars. Their dogs, half of the dogs won't bite. The half that does bite won't have an out. Oh man, I'm in for a long 5 days, right?
Yeah.
So I give them a big talk about the necessity of having control of your dog, right? Like I'm trying to proselytize them. I'm trying to show them religion, and they don't have any. So then we go out to do the first practical work, and I ask this guy to send his dog. The dog bites me. A little bit of stuff goes on, and then I nodded my head at the guy to come get his dog or do whatever he's going to do, and he recalls the dog to him, like boom, back to heel. I'm like, oh, that was interesting. And I said, okay, send him again. And can you leave him with me this time? Dog comes down, bites the crap out of me. I nod my head. The dog outs, withdraws about 15 feet, lies down, and guards me. And I'm like, oh, even more interesting. Then I say, okay, do you have a stopped attack on this dog? He said, yeah, if you mean a call off, that's what I got. And I said, okay. And he's actually, well, I'll get to that part in a second. So I said, okay, let's see it. Guy sends his really strong dog down the field to me, tells him down. The dog folds his leg up in motion, folds his legs up, hits the ground on his elbows and chest, skids about 10 feet, and stops, staring at me, guarding me, right? Halfway between me and the handler. I was like, wow, that's pretty wild. That's a nice stopped attack. That's a nice down en route. And then the guy said, well, that's one that he knows. There's others. And I said, well, show me one of the others. And he had down en route. He had out and return. He had out and return. And this is something I still do with police dogs. Like you teach the dog to come away from the decoy, whirl around and lie back down and guard. And you tell them with your voice how far you want them to come. So this would be the way that you would extract somebody from a building, in a tactically best practices manner, right? So your dog has detained the guy, either bitten him or got him behind a door or something like that. You recall the dog 10 feet to 15 feet to you. When he comes 15 feet, you down him. He whirls around and lies down. You tell the guy to advance to the dog. He does. Then you call your dog back another 15 feet. You tell the guy to follow the dog. And that's how you bring the dog back to you along with the guy in a completely controlled manner without having to poke your nose into a situation that you haven't necessarily kind of threat assessed and made safe. Huh. And they were all like this. Like there were like 6 police dogs at this seminar. It was a small seminar. They were all trained like this. And I was like, holy shit. I'm here to teach you guys to train dogs, and I can't train dogs this well. And I said, and I finally just kind of got disgusted and like threw down the sleeve and said, okay, who taught you guys? And they said, oh, Kevin Sheldall. So Kevin's an important resource too.
Man, I'd love to get in contact with this guy.
Yeah, I can give you his contact. I know he's done a couple of gigs for military. He did a teaching gig at Lackland for us. He's the real deal. He's kind of semi-retired now, but I know he's teaching a police dog class, one of his several week patrol or detection classes in New Mexico right now. They sent me an email because he's got a breeding program dog in his class. Okay, so that's pretty much. That's a long answer to the question, but those are influences. Those are mentors. I hope it's a valuable list.
Awesome list. Let's pause the recording. You want to do that to see
Sure.
if it actually recorded?
Yeah, I'll kill myself if it didn't. I don't want to try to do that again. So I'll stop recording.